It's time for Remodel Revolution. And now, an award-winning contractor with over 40 years' experience. Here is Alex Guthrie.
Remodel Revolution. I'm your host, Alex Guthrie. We have got a fantastic show today. We're going to talk to Alex Carey with IBHS, which is a organization that studies storm damage and how to make your home safer from it. Also, in our second segment, we're going to talk with our very good friend of the show, nursery man extraordinaire, Barry Johnson. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. When you live in Tornado Alley, it's always good to have friends in the insurance industry and friends that can help you in how to prepare your home for severe weather, and people that study it other than just your contractor who's normally just going to patch the hole. So I have been having these discussions with IBHS for several years about how to protect your home and their fortified program. And my friend Alex Carey, who is their fortified program director. And good morning, Alex. How are you?
Good morning, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So we just went through Ice-Ageddon here in Texas. I think it maybe for the most part missed you, fortunately for you. And so true to our normal weather patterns around here, we go from Ice-Ageddon, and 5 days later it's 80 degrees. And in about 2 days, we're going to have thunderstorms. Spring storms at that. And so I love doing these shows. I think it's really timely this time of year to do these shows about hail damage and protecting your home. And you guys have all kinds of programs. Why don't you explain to our audience, who is IBHS? Did I have that right? Yeah. And what do you guys do?
Sure. So IBHS stands for the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. And we are a research and communications organization. And so we do a wide array of research. We have a full-scale test facility in South Carolina where we're able to test actual full-size structures, both residential and commercial structures, and subject them to an array of risks such as rain, wind-driven rain, hail. We do a lot of research on hail and wildfire. And we also do a lot of research after storm events. So, for example, we went and did some field studies after Harvey and Michael. And with all of that, we can help provide guidance for homeowners and contractors and insurers on ways to better protect homes and businesses and help them better withstand these various disasters. One of the ways we do that is through our Fortified Home program. And we also have a lot of guidance online for various things. Like we recently launched our Thunderstorm Ready, which is applicable to what you just spoke of today with the spring storms headed our way here shortly. So
on the Fortified has always intrigued me because we adapted in North Texas, and I don't know about other parts of the state, I'm sure they've done it as well, sort of wind codes from the coastal wind codes. And so they just sort of introduced certain codes like strapping down headers and fortifying things with hurricane clips and things like that primarily in new homes, but also in the remodels. Some of the cities, of course, all the cities are a little different around here, but also in the remodels, they'll have us go in and do some of that as well. And it's always intrigued me. I never understood how our houses held up to much wind the way we put them together since I've been doing it. And when we quit using real nails and things like that. I mean, I know how the old ones hold up because they built them to hold up, but the new ones aren't built as well. So having this fortified program to me is super, super important. How do people get, tell us a little more about Fortified, and tell us how people can get on, builders in particular, can get into the Fortified program.
Yeah, sure thing. So Fortified it's a building standard. It's a series of systematic approaches to putting into either new construction, actually available for existing homes as well, where people can strengthen using very specific but usually pretty low cost methods to strengthen the home. So one of the, there's actually 3 levels. So it starts at the roof, which is where both existing and new construction would play in, where we know that the roof is the first line of defense. And most often that is the thing that gets damaged, even in those spring storm events. You get a high wind, some shingles are lost, and then in many cases, more water comes in. So things like adding ring shank nails to strengthen the attachment of the roof deck, using high wind shingles and tying down the edges better, and then doing what we call a sealed roof deck can prevent a lot of damage. It keeps that water out of the house and allows that.
And a lot of your emphasis in this program is water damage. It
absolutely is, and we always start with the roof, regardless of what we're trying to achieve. So that is the most important. From there, we do have 2 other levels. Generally, those tend to be done more in new construction. Those, as you mentioned, the hurricane straps or the wind straps that tie down the roof to the walls and the walls to the foundation. That occurs in our gold level, and then that sort of intermediate level takes care of things like gable ends, which we know are pretty.
Well, they get the lift, and so it's the wind
right.
comes up and it starts lifting it like an umbrella in the wind. And if your roof isn't strapped down, so I'm really curious with the hurricane strapping and the wind strapping, and you've been able to go in to communities after these storms have occurred and study. What have you guys found?
It's interesting because the progression of damage is really. No matter which storm it is, and whether it's a hurricane or high wind, straight line winds, the damage is the same, where we see the damage start with the roof, and then it escalates from there, where we start to see some gable losses, or some garage doors are particularly vulnerable, and we've done a lot of research with garage doors over the last year. And then in the really extreme winds, that's when we start to see the full structural failures. But there's a lot of things that people can do with the roof and with garage doors and openings to prevent a lot of those damages. In things like, I'll focus on garage doors for a moment because they are so significant in what we've seen.
And they're made out of recycled Coors cans.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
Not a high impact door.
No, not so much. And which is very common. And so looking for a design pressure rated door can solve that. And we know that garage doors are what we call damage amplifiers. So when that opening goes, it can create all kinds of roof damage and structural failures in some cases. So just replacing a garage door can make a big difference.
And the cool thing is that now we have the ability to put a more substantial garage door in, where for years we didn't have a lot of these options. We didn't have a really good sealed door or a really good system to put in that would withstand a high wind in a garage door in particular. You're right. That's a 20 by 18 or 7 foot tall, 18 or 22 foot wide hole in your wall.
That's right. That's right. And those wind pressures can wreak havoc.
Yeah, they can. So the old adage was, if a tornado was coming, open all the windows to equalize the pressure. That's what Grandma did. Do I need to go around and open all my windows if a tornado's coming?
I'll tell you what, I did that. I grew up in Connecticut and we didn't know any better either. And so when those storms threatened, we opened our windows
Uh,
and man, now that I know what I know, I just cringe and I'm grateful that we never had any real significant damage. So no, do not open your windows. That's one of our one of our key messages for the thunderstorm ready is actually to make sure that your garage door is closed and make sure your windows are closed. And even surprisingly, you wouldn't think of this, but closing your interior doors can also be pretty effective because what that does is if you have a breach in your house through an opening, it actually can help isolate the pressure to that area instead of allowing the whole house to pressurize. So that was something that we discovered through our research a few years back when we were doing some testing on wind.
And some of the things that we're trying to guard against, of course, is flying debris. I mean, that's one of the most destructive parts of a tornado. And I've witnessed it. I lived through lots of tornadoes down here, but I have seen some amazing things. 2x4s turned into big, giant missiles that are sticking out of the side of a house. Just incredible how that happens.
Yeah, it's amazing what wind can do, and it's really bizarre because sometimes we'll even see things as small as pine straw sticking out of a structural member, and it's just it's incredible the power of wind and what it does in those types of storms.
So let's talk about hail and how we can. That's usually at some point in the spring around here in Tornado Alley. Of course, hail's one of the first things that we see when a tornado's coming. Often. What can we do now? I know we've got class 4 shingles and things like that. Why don't you kind of go through your list of how we protect our roofs from hail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to revisit for a moment that making sure that the rest of the layers of the roof are in good space. So when you're re-roofing, making sure that you're doing that sealed roof deck and that you're putting in the latching down the edges well with some starter strip and things like that. And then when we get to the roof cover, there are hail impact rated shingles that have been in existence for quite some time. We have focused at IBHS, we've focused on doing a lot of research on hail because many of the, we are funded by the property insurance industry, and many of you probably know out there in Texas that the insurance industry pays for your roof every few years. And
yes,
so they're really
do.
interested in helping you and helping themselves to make those roofs better withstand hail.
Reluctantly,
so
I might add.
Yeah, right. So we have discovered that not all hail impact shingles are created equal. And we actually do have a wind rating for hail, the shingles that we've tested. We took a lot of the most popular shingles and we put them through an array of testing, and now we actually have some good, better, and actually some pretty poor performing in there as well.
Interesting.
So homeowners can actually select the shingles that perform best and know that that will help them to keep their roof in better shape or give their roof a better chance at the next time a hail.
Well, and the insurance companies, they give you a little incentive to put a class 4 shingle on, as I understand.
Some insurers do offer some incentives and provide a little bit of a credit for folks that use those shingles. I know that especially in the hail prone areas, we see that quite often. Not all of them. And if you are interested in that, I would definitely check with your insurer, your agent to see what kind of potential incentives are.
The best hail protection I thought would be something like a standing seam metal roof. That always seemed to me that would, and then I've gotten up on those things and I've seen where hail has actually punctured them. And you get these little bitty fissures where that hailstone is hit, and you don't know you've got a leak because you've got maybe ice and water shield or even tar paper underneath that thing. And you may not find out for, years actually, that you've had this little slow drippy leak that's kind of wearing everything away. The water creeps in there and all of a sudden you got a big problem. Is metal the best hail protector, or what is your opinion on if someone came up to me and said, Alex, I want the number one thing to protect my roof from hail, I don't care what it costs, what would you tell them?
The most important thing is to make sure, regardless of what type of roof cover you're choosing, is that it has that impact rating. That class 4 is what you're after. I mentioned that not all class 4s are created equal, but that will at least assure you that there is a better chance of that roof. It gives it some level of resistance to hail. Now, when you get into hailstones that are 2 inches and larger, there's not a whole lot of roof covers that are going to withstand that type of impact. However, looking for that class 4, that's really going to be your key, because that means that product was actually tested and should have some degree of protection against that impact up to a certain point.
Let's talk a little bit about wind protection and the fortified recommendations for the straps that we're now going to strapping walls down, where it basically we're taking the rafters and we're making sure that the rafters, the ceiling joist, the walls, or everything's tied together so that by the time it gets down to the foundation, it's all strapped together and it gives it a whole lot more strength. And there's particular areas that you want to do this, like around garage doors and big openings and things like that. Can you address that?
Sure. So there's actually 2 places that we're really focusing on that. One is maybe more achievable for existing homes, which is things like porches and carports, because they tend to be giant sails. So if the wind can get under there, it can do a lot more damage than just removing that roof or carport, because many times they're tied into the main structure. So actually getting a tie from the roof to the beams to the posts, and the posts to the foundation, just that can actually create a much stronger connection and prevent bigger damage, that damage amplifier that I mentioned before. When we get into the main structure of the house, most often we see that done with new construction, unless somebody's doing like a full gut rehab or something along those lines. But we do suggest in the fortified program, we require having an engineer involved in that load path design. Because with Simpson and USP, those are the 2 main providers of straps. There is a wide array of different strapping that you could use, and all of them handle different loads. So getting an engineer to sort of pinpoint which straps should be used is really something that we require in the program and highly suggest. But getting that roof to wall connection, that wall to in some cases wall to wall connection if you're 2 stories, and then that wall to foundation is really critical. With corners and openings, certainly are the more vulnerable parts that are can see those pressures.
So particularly large openings, like if you have a large set of windows on a wall, and or particularly if it's like a stacked window where it goes up 2 stories, you really want to get on each side of that and strap that thing down, because that is a huge weak point. I tell people all the time when I'm looking at their houses and they're wondering why they're getting cracks around doors and windows, and I go, well, that's a weak point in that wall. It's not really connected to anything. And so when the wind blows, it actually will rack your house at that point, and that's where it shows up. It'll get a little crack there at that weak point. And so we need to get into a better building practices. And I know Fortified, actually, this is what Fortified teaches, but to get into better building practices overall, we're protecting our homeowners from these susceptible areas with this load strapping, as you called it.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we've got a few more minutes, and I want to talk about preparing before these storms come in, because you guys have on your website, tell everybody what your website is.
Yeah, so our main website is disastersafety.org. And at that site, that thunderstorm ready that I mentioned can be accessed through that site, as well as our hail ratings for shingles can be accessed through there.
I love this site, and it's simple, and I'm looking at the page that is prepare your home for spring thunderstorms. And what I like about it is it's not so full of stuff that it makes me crazy. It's like less than 10 items. It's just practical things to do. One of the things that I tell people constantly, I tell them every year, go around and trim your trees or look for dead branches. What happens when a tornado wind, a 100-mile-an-hour wind hits a dead limb? What does it do to it?
Yeah, trees can be even live healthy trees can certainly incur damage in tornado events or high wind events. And so we do suggest that people go and especially limbs that are above your home, and even if they're alive and healthy, should be attended to, and getting a tree professional to look at that and make sure that is done properly, to maintain the health of the tree.
Well, and if you see dead limbs, I mean, the main thing I tell them is if you see dead limbs, get them out of there. Don't
absolutely start with the dead limbs for sure.
They turn into missiles.
Oh yes. And we've seen many a limb through a roof.
Absolutely, sure. Absolutely. We see it all the time. Of course, we had a tornado come through Dallas last year. I think it was last year, right through the middle of North Dallas, and and big, beautiful, mature neighborhoods, big, beautiful, mature trees, wiped them out. It was just amazing. And to see the damage, to drive through there and see the damage that happens from that, people, it's really hard for a community to rebuild from that. It takes time. One of the other things that you have on your list is surge protectors for lightning. Why is this important?
Well, lightning can do a considerable amount of damage even far from where it actually strikes. So making sure your home is protected with a surge protector is certainly a low cost and easy way to help mitigate some of those damages when these spring storms hit and the lightning is so prolific.
I always recommend to my clients that they do a whole house surge protector, and it does multiple things for the home besides just protect it from lightning and power surges. It also helps sort of moderate the electric current going into the house. So it actually helps your appliances and your electronics run smoother and more efficiently because it doesn't have all the little millions of little spikes that are in that current when they're running normally. And so let's see, what do we so also, this one I thought was interesting. I hadn't really thought about this in the past, and that's to install protective screens on your HVAC units.
Yes, that is also a very simple and low cost way for homeowners to protect what can be a very costly damage, and that. So we have more details on the Thunderstorm Ready Guide on what that looks like. I know that's sometimes a little hard to picture.
Yeah.
But I would...
Well, those screens will also protect your air conditioning units from the yard man with the weed eater.
That's right. That's right.
So
from
multi-purpose.
A wild weed whacker, right?
That's right. And then your fourth item on here is wind-rated garage doors. Tell us a little more about that. We touched on it earlier.
Yeah, so what a homeowner would want to look for is making sure that it has a design pressure. That means that door system has been tested for higher winds and the pressures associated with it. And the reason for that, again, is because of that, when I mentioned a damage amplifier earlier, what that means is when that door fails, or if that door fails, that can create a lot more damage in your home because the wind pressures get in and they can literally create wall failures or entire roof structure failures, depending on the pressures. So that's a really important measure to take to prevent your home from having damage from high wind.
Our garage doors used to be made from steel. In fact, they still call a lot of them steel garage doors, and I'm sure some of them are. But then we went to the lighter grade aluminum. And anybody that's ever backed into their garage door understands it doesn't withstand pressure. And so now we have a heavier rated garage door that'll be wind resistant. And then of course now on most garages, we seal them with a rubber gasket to try and keep water out as well. But what we're referring to is if your garage door gets blown in and then you let all that air pressure inside that garage, then you start having other damage that occurs from that. So upgrade to steel gutters and downspouts, that I thought that was interesting. That can be a kind of a pricey upgrade. What's so important about that? Who cares if my gutter gets hail damage?
Yeah, the steel gutters are just much more, have much more strength to them, and keep the gutter being in good shape is important to keep that water away from the house. But I think that so that is another element that we have in that thunderstorm ready guide, in that checkbox that you can do. It may be a little more expensive to do that upgrade, but it's really worth it in the long run to prevent that kind of damage.
Well, and we talk a lot around here about controlling water. So a lot of what people don't understand with these heavy storms that we're all inevitably going to have this spring, and oftentimes into the summer, is that one of the things that's interesting about our area in Dallas, where we're located, is we get most of our rain in about a 20-day period. I mean, inch-wise. We have super heavy rain all at once, and then it may not rain for 3 months. And so
Right.
water control is super, super important. And making sure that your gutter system can handle as much as it can. And then the main thing that I see people make a big mistake, they might put a downspout that dumps all the water at the foundation, just goes down, just dumps it, instead of taking it someplace where it can run off properly, or to a drainage system that it can run into. So that really needs to be thought through in all of this, because like you guys keep telling me, and everybody, water is really the big enemy here.
It is. It absolutely is. And getting, the initial part is getting that water off the roof and away from the house, certainly away from the foundation. That can create all sorts of other water issues if you're dumping all that water right there.
And then lastly, I want to talk about self-protection in a thunderstorm, or after a thunderstorm, or after a tornado. Give us some advice on, after it all passes, what do you really need to be aware of? Let's say you're about to walk out your front door and see what's left of the neighborhood.
Sure. So I think one of the main things is the power lines. You definitely want to watch out for down power lines and not go anywhere near them, and especially if they're laying in standing water, is making sure that you steer very clear of that, because that power can actually spread throughout the water and literally kill you.
And just because you don't see sparks doesn't mean it's not live. And so
Exactly
you
right.
have to assume it's live. Treat it as if it's live until someone tells you
Exactly
different.
right. Yep. And then I would say too is just being aware of what kind of tree damage is around you, and making sure that there's no overhanging limbs that could fall. That's a pretty common thing after tornadoes and hurricanes, is that sometimes those trees do damage after the fact. So
Well,
really being careful.
speaking to that also is making sure that your structure is still stable, and wherever you're standing, you don't want something just crashing down all of a sudden. And so you just need to be aware. And I like to tell people to keep a little kit in the closet. Like, if you're going to get some new tennis shoes, take your old pair of tennis shoes. They still fit. Put them in the closet. That's like an emergency pair of shoes. If this happens in the middle of the night, what is it that you're going to need? Because it always happens in the middle of the night for some reason. What are you going to need to get out of your house safely? You're going to need shoes. You're going to need a flashlight. You really need a weather radio that you can wind up and get reports and stuff. But so take care. Self-preservation is the most important part of all of this this time of year.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It's been so much fun.
Oh, it's great. Great to be here. Well, thanks for having us
Super
back.
great information. And then we're going to talk again, like we did last year, I'm sure, about wildfires, because you guys have some fascinating studies that you've done and recommendations for homeowners to protect their structures from wildfires. But we'll wait for it to get nice and dry and crispy outside, and then we'll do that
After the spring storms dry out, right?
one. Thank you so much, Alex Carey with IBHS. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Alex. Have a great day.
We'll be right back. Well, it's only a few short weeks until we're going to be running our air conditioners 24 hours a day. It's going to get super hot, super quick. We generally go from winter to summer in about a 48-hour period. So you need to call my friends at Total Air and Heat and get them to come down and check out your system and make sure your system is running efficiently and operating the way it ought to be. Make sure that your air filters are changed. Make sure that your Freon or your coolant is up to snuff and you've got enough of it, and make sure all those little hundreds of electronic parts that run that thing are working properly. So give my friends at Total Air and Heat a call at 972-881-0020. They are selling the Green Speed Intelligence technology from Carrier, and it is a fantastic technology, new technology in air conditioning. Check them out at totalair.com. Give them a call, 972-881-0020. Imagine this, a totally customized, organized, and beautiful master closet. A home office that fits right into a perfect space. A pantry designed specifically for your storage needs. Imagine your home totally organized. It's time to call the design professionals at Closets by Design DFW and turn your dreams into a reality. With a design staff over 30 strong, Closets by Design works directly with you to create your dream space, and they build it locally, helping support the DFW community. Check them out at dallas.closetsbydesign.com or call them at 972-361-0010. Use the promo code RRV to find out about the amazing specials and discounts available. That's dallas.closetsbydesign.com or call them at 972-361-0010, and don't forget that promo code RRV, Closets by Design. Well, we just had the big Ice-ageddon here in Texas, where the entire state turned into a skating rink. And I woke up and I thought, I better get Barry Johnson in here, because we need to talk about what people need to do with their frozen landscaping. There's going to be an awful lot of loss, and there's going to be some things that maybe you think are a loss, but they'll come back. And I needed to get the expert, Barry Johnson from Blooming Colors Nursery in Flower Mound, Texas. Good morning.
Grapevine, Texas. You always
Grapevine. I always say Flower Mound. Why
Mound.
I always say Flower Mound? Maybe it's Nursery Flowers. I don't know. Sorry about that. Grapevine, Texas. They're your neighbors.
It's close. We serve a lot of people in Flower Mound. We like Flower Mound.
How are you, sir?
Doing good. Doing really good.
That's good.
Unfrozen, 81 yesterday.
Yeah.
So, what's what's 84-degree change in a week?
Yeah,
You know?
it's no big deal. No big deal. So when I was looking at somebody's garden yesterday, their ornamental garden, their poor little plants looked really, really bad. I mean, they were like, they are not green anymore.
No. It really hurt a lot. The main thing to think about right now is to be patient, because a lot of the things you see are just burned. It's just winter burn, just like you get a sunburn. They're winter burned, and so the leaves look dead. They are dead.
Should you cut them off?
Not yet, because you don't know how far to cut, how far to go
How
on
far
it.
the damage is on the yeah.
And my recommendation right now is hold steady, water once or twice a week, fertilize in mid-March, and then wait till early April before you do anything.
Start ripping it all out.
That's right. That's right. I mean, it'd be better for me if everybody ripped everything out and had to start over. But
right.
a lot of those things that just look dead and they're never going to come back.
It's sad. It is sad.
And there are some examples of things that probably aren't. Agave, certain palms, things like that.
They're gone.
They're gone. Probably a lot of
Like
bananas.
a tropical type of, or tropical, or maybe a deserty type of a cactus type thing.
Yeah. A lot of the sedum and things like that. That just, we're zone kind of 7 to 8, depending on who you talk to. That was a zone 6.
Which end of town you're in.
Yeah. And who you talk to but that was a zone 6 freeze. That was down to 0. And there's just a lot of plants here that aren't made for it, but they're in the ground. The snow, believe it or not, helped more than anything, because that gave a new blanket
cover. Yeah.
and that helped keep it closer to 30 rather than 0.
Well, also, do you think it's going to affect the bug population? Should it help the bugs you don't want?
That's hard to say.
I mean, if I was digging around trying to find some frozen bugs under there, because no electricity, no heat. It's like, let's go get some frozen bugs.
Yeah. It's I've yet to see a bug since all of this, so you might be onto something.
They're in shock.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how much it affects that. I'm not sure about the correlation on that, because one thing that we know, weeds and bugs are tougher than us. So
yeah, they'll be back.
Yeah,
they'll be back.
Yeah.
What is your recommendation now? Let's just pretend like it's kind of a normal time of year. And honestly, it's just bizarre how we go from, I had my electric blanket, my big blankie, and everything on the other night, just like 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
And now it's sheets and a fan.
I turned my fan on last night, and I was about to turn the AC on.
It's crazy how extreme we go so quickly.
Yeah.
What are you recommending I do right now to prep my beds?
Well, the thing to remember is our last average freeze is still a month away. So while it was 0 a week ago and it was 80 yesterday, it still could be 20 in 2 weeks. We don't know. So right now, you can clean the beds a little bit, blow them out if you want. You can remulch. Middle of March to end of March, depending on how the weather goes, is when I would fertilize. You'd use a high nitrogen fertilizer. We sell a Blooming Colors blend. It's 2400. It's all nitrogen, and that's what you want to be putting out.
And what does nitrogen do? I don't know anything about plants.
Nitrogen is what gets plants growing, gets them greening, and gives them. It's kind of like giving your kid a Snickers.
A vitamin.
Yeah.
Snickers.
It really gets going. Remember when they used to run around the
I
room?
need some of that stuff, man. I love Snickers. That's
now.
my favorite.
But yeah, it'll start new growth. It'll get things leafing again, and then you can see where you're at. We're right at the edge of planting petunias, another blooming spring plant called stock, dianthus, alyssum, snapdragons are all coming into the store this weekend. So there's some freeze tolerant, not super freeze, but light freeze tolerant plants that you can be putting out and freshen up your pots and everything. But
you're right about the freeze, because now my wife has always told me Easter. She uses that as her.
That's right.
And I always tell her, oh man, it's like 80 degrees. I'm not worried about it, and I plant the tomatoes, and then guess what I'm doing Easter?
Yep.
I'm replanting tomatoes. So you got to be patient, and it's hard to do when the weather's this nice.
It's hard to do. I had my vegetable beds all prepped, and I was like, I think I'll put out some tomatoes. I'll just cover them with
What the heck, man?
some jugs of milk and make a little greenhouse. And luckily I didn't put those out. I think statistically in Dallas-Fort Worth we've only had 2 freezes after Easter in 150 years. Farmers will look at mesquite trees and pecan trees, and when you see those leaf out, it's not going to freeze.
Really?
That's
very interesting.
The real one.
Very interesting.
But yeah, being a little patient, I will get my my vegetables out a little bit early. I'll still try them and get them started. I like tomatoes early.
Okay, so I have a couple of things I want to address with you today that are kind of things that I think people need to hear. One of the things that I think is real important is that flower beds are expensive. The plants are expensive. Prepping them is expensive, time consuming. And if it's done right, of course, it's wonderful. But a lot of people don't hire the right people to do it.
That's right. I see it time and time again, both with prepping beds and getting the beds the right way. I also see it in replacing a lot of drainage systems in people's houses and what people think is downhill, and water still doesn't flow uphill.
It still won't do it, even in 2021.
and it's not complicated to add the right amount of compost and fertilizer, till it in to the depth that you need it, mulch the beds well, it prepares them and gives a great place for the plant to grow as far as keeping the weeds out as well. There's certain fertilizers, certain pre-emergents that you put in to make it easy on the customer. But it is very, very important. What we're doing right now is planning. We're doing landscape jobs, a lot of patios and things like that right now, installing, but doing plans, getting ready for the planting season, and also,
so like scheduling, planning,
mainly planning to plant.
Yeah.
And then also, it is a great time to plant trees. Our tree sale starts this weekend, and they're dormant. They go in the
look like a
ground.
stick.
They look like a stick. You're buying a lot of faith.
Faith.
But now's the time to put them in. They'll root out. They'll have plenty of time to root before the summer heat, which is the worst time of year to plant. And that's a good thing to do this time of year.
I've noticed one of my neighbors has some ligustrums on the side of their house, and they don't look too good. They're a little brown. They look a little frostbit.
They are. I looked across at my neighbors as well, and what used to be a green shield, so I couldn't see his house, is now all brown.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of Indian
Do you
hawthorn.
think they survive? So if I look at my plants and the leaves are just all brown, does that mean they're dead, or are they just burned?
Usually just burned, and they should re-leaf. Now, whether they re-leaf from the tips of the branches, halfway down, or the base, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
My thought is a lot of plants like ligustrum, pittosporum, some of the weaker plants aren't going to come back. And if they do, it's going to be slow and from the base. But, it's really we won't know, and for another full month and a half.
Really, that long, even if it stays warm? They just need time to, what makes them grow? Is it the roots?
It's the soil temperature.
The soil temperature.
Yep.
And so we need to also talk about where to get quality plants and what to look for. So everybody in the world, every big box store sells plants to go in your beds. And now where we used to plant with seeds, people don't plant with seeds anymore. They buy pre-grown plants. Is there a rule of thumb on how to make sure you're not just wasting your money buying a low quality plant or something like that?
the biggest mistake I see is buying a plant that's not for this area. Not so much low quality, although that's an issue. And the issue with quality is usually root. When you're buying at a box store or something, pull the plant out of the pot, look at the roots. Do you see a lot of roots? That's good. Is it very lightly rooted? Pass on it. Look at the health and vigor of the plant as well. Time and time again, I was reminded of this just 2 weeks ago. A customer called me. We did a bid for him a couple of years ago. He called me back and he said, Barry, I have to admit I was wrong. I went this other way. It's been 2 years. Look at it. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
And super nice guy. And he spent his money twice. And it's just hard to see that. Spend your money once, spend it right, get a good value. Don't pay top dollar, but get a good value, good plant.
Once you spend the money to do ornamental gardens around your house, it should be almost a lifetime investment. I mean, you're kind of maintaining them after that if they're done right?
Yep.
So, or you can do it the cheap way and redo them every few years.
Yep.
And that's never fun for anybody.
It's never fun, and it's very expensive. And yeah, I'm doing beds around my house, but I only do them once, and then they're there and they mature. And as I mature, they'll be there forever. I'm not going to redo them. Yeah, I'm still a very young man.
I really appreciate you coming in today.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It's great. And I wanted everybody to get some good information on how to handle what they're about to experience with their frozen ornamental flower beds. Barry Johnson with Blooming Colors of Grapevine, Texas. Give him a call or contact him. What's your email?
Our
your website.
My website is www.bloomingcolorsnursery.com. You can just Google Blooming Colors Nursery and we come right up, and visit our website. You can request things on there, contact us, or call the store.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
That's the show for today. Thank you so much for watching. Check us out on all your social media. Like us, subscribe, share. Tell us you love us. Send us questions. Send me any information you want about remodeling or anything I can pass on to any of my guests. If you have questions, if you have any suggestions for future shows, we'd love to hear about it. Have a wonderful day. Until next week, this is Alex Guthrie signing off.
The views and opinions of this program are for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended to replace the recommendations of a hired professional. You can catch Remodel Revolution anytime. Follow the show on the website, remodelrevolutionradio.com, or on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, using the handle @Remodel Revolution Radio. You can always listen to the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn, and watch the show anytime on YouTube.